Welcome to another episode of Leading Our Adventures, your Venturing BSA podcast. I'm Hannah Todd, and I'm honored to be your host today. Thank you for joining us on this adventure. And just like normal, we have a special conversation from a top-notch guest joining this conversation for you tonight. Our guest is a remarkable individual whose journey through venturing program has included lots of fun and adventure. In addition to helping our Cub Scout friends, the future of our program. Now, across the nation, there are many opportunities for people to get involved with Cub Scouts. For our program, the problem is that not many people know that they exist. Well, we're going to fix that through this conversation that you do not want to miss. Advisors, Cub Masters alike, along with venturers, strap in. This is going to be an awesome conversation. Without further ado, please welcome Natalie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey.
Hi, it's good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I would love to. So, hey listeners, my name is Natalie Fakhriravari. I'm a sophomore at Baylor University. I'm double majoring in political science and history, double minoring in religion and German. I am currently the Council Venturing Officers Association president down in my home council, Sam Houston Area Council. I am also president of the Baylor Venturing Crew here in Longhorn Council. And I've been lucky enough to serve as youth program director for a few Weeblo Scout events. And I've been heavily involved in Cub Scout camp staffing and regular BSA camp staffing. And I'm really excited to be here. This is so much fun.
Yay, thank you for being here. Maybe someday you could go to camp school, do this on the long term, kind of for your long job.
That is literally my dream. I want to be a high school teacher, cool. And then in the summers, I want to be a program director.
That's so cool. Camp school is a lot of fun, but I am curious. It sounds like some of this came with venturing from like talking to you before the show. How did you find venturing?
So it's actually, it's a little silly. I had a lot of friends who were in Scouts BSA and they eventually had their Eagle Court of Honor. I went to that and I'm like, wow, this is actually something that looks like a lot of fun. I kind of felt a little left out. I was a little jealous. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go join Scouts. So I head on over to my little council office. I'm like, guys, I want to join Scouts BSA. They're like, you're 17 and you're going to age out in 3 months. And I was like, so oh my gosh. And so the man at the office, he's like, but have you heard of venturing? I was like, tell me more. And he went on, he told me the whole spiel. I was like, okay, a little hesitant. I look up the advancement guide. I see that it's kind of like choose your own adventure. Like I was really intrigued by the community service aspects. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. As soon as I turned 18, I went on to the little beascout.org. I put in my zip code and I found this unit near me. I give the unit leader a call and she's like, oh, we volunteer out at this camp. And I'm like, great. I would love to come out, volunteer, get to know the crew members. She was actually the camp director. And my first day there, she's like, do you want to do archery? I'm like, sure. And now all of a sudden I'm staffing our council's weekend adventure camp as an archery director. I go get my little certification. I sign a contract and I fill out my BSA adult application. And now I'm a venturing member in Crew 1292 and I'm a staffer at Beauvais Scout Ranch, just like that.
Surprise! What a little bit of paperwork and youth protection and archery training will do.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of funny because like I found venturing because of my brother doing Cub Scout camp, and your story is kind of like that story flipped on itself. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny because when I showed up to Beauvais Scout Ranch, the place where I worked, I'm like, this is eerily familiar. And then I called up my parents and they're like, oh yeah, you went camping with us there when your brother was a Cub Scout. And I'm like, this is like a full circle moment. Like I was here when I was like 5, 6 as like a younger sibling, and now I'm working here.
Wow. Any like incredible moments that made you feel like this is the time for you?
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, one incredibly memorable moment when I was at camp, it happened within like my first few months staffing there. I was helping run the archery range as one of the instructors, and I was giving a safety talk because because I was the new one, I was assigned to the safety talk, so I would learn. And I'm giving my spiel, and I had just come from the flag ceremony because at our camp we go flag ceremony and then right into program. So I was still in like my venturing greens. I was in full class A, and now there wasn't much on it because I just joined a crew. So it was a little empty, but it was still the green. And as soon as my little safety talk was over, this girl comes up to me, cutie little girl, couldn't have been older than like Tiger or Wolf. She was still super young, but she looks at me when I said, "Do you have any questions?" And she just looks me dead in the eye. And she's like, "When I grow up, I want to be a venture scout just like you." And I don't know, something about that interaction was just so cute and precious. And I was so new to the program, but just me being there in the greens. And then she's like, "I want to be you." That meant so much to me. And it just kind of like put in perspective, like the impact that we can have on these kids.
I get chills. Oh my goodness, that's so cool. It's a good reminder that like we're all being watched. Me and my peers say that wearing your uniform is like wearing a walking billboard. So like, welcome to the program, and you're already making an impact. You never know who's watching when you're in leadership position or when you're just trying to like enjoy the flag ceremony, I guess. That's very cool. You're now like the top 10 coolest people in that young scout's life. I bet if you go and ask her,
What an honor.
That will be the case. That's so cool. Could you share another memorable experience where venturers interacted with Cub Scouts, and how did that impact the groups positively? You've talked a little bit about camp. Tell me more.
Yeah, so this past year, 2023, I had this remarkable opportunity to be one of the program directors for a Weebles event in our council. Of course, we had like the actual adult program directors as our advisors because we were only 20. We were so new to this. But me and my good friend Chris, who is one of the like territory Sea Scout people, if you know him, but
Yeah,
we were co-program directors for Weebles Coyote Trail Extreme down in Sam Houston Area Council. And the twist we wanted to put on the program was introducing these young Weeble Scouts to older youth programs. And so in this event, it was so cool. We had different areas run by different scouts. So like the whole waterfront was all Sea Scouts in blues. The like high adventure, which was just catapults. We used like our NYLT staves, and we had the kids build catapults with venturers, but they were in the greens. And then so kids were like, "Well, what's that uniform? I've never seen that before." And then we had a whole area run by like the Order of the Arrow, and it was just so much fun because these kids were like, it was something they'd never seen, and they're like, "Well, I didn't even know that existed. I want to do that when I'm older." And it was just, oh my gosh, I can't even describe how much fun I had putting this together and then seeing the payout.
Wow. You have so many people, so many moving parts as the youth program director. That's really cool. And they just get to see a lot of like amazing scouts going and teaching them how to do things. I just get, oh my goodness, a warm and fuzzy feeling just thinking about it. Do you know how many Cub Scouts came?
Oh my gosh. I definitely remember when we were planning, we were like, guys, we gotta at least hit like 75. So we were planning for like a smaller amount, but I remember us exceeding it. It had to have been like 125, 150, because it was solely Weeblos. Like we didn't have Tiger Scouts, Bears. It was just the Weeble Scouts, Weeblos and Aero Flight. And so that was like a big number to us. And I was really excited.
Wow, that's a large group of people to come out for the day, have a bunch of fun, and then go home at the end. Lots of fun for your volunteers, for your Order of the Arrow. That recruiting must have been awesome for that. And I'm sure your camp director was very, very proud of the turnout.
Yeah. It was great. But I was wondering about you, Hannah, in your experience, what were some effective strategies that you used for venturers to engage in Cub Scouts? Because I remember when we were talking beforehand, you had mentioned that you'd also worked with the Cubs. So I'm curious, like, how did you establish that mentorship and leadership?
Sure. Venturing and Cub Scouts were kind of the first interactions I had with the Cub Scout program. I have a younger brother who's 6 years younger than I am. So it was kind of logical. He was in Scouts. I was like, I want to do that. I was 13, but come join the fun when I turned 14. And planning joint activities where Ventures and Cub Scouts can interact and work together on group projects, games, or community service activities. The Marshmallow Spaghetti Challenge is really, really great when you have a few tigers, wolves, and bears on your team because they're thinking of things that my brain will never comprehend ever in the history of the world ever again. They're just so fragile. They're very excited with a task, and they're really excited that Ventures and Sea Scouts and older Scouts basically want to interact. This allows the natural mentorship opportunities to arise. Ventures gain leadership. Ventures can guide the Cub Scouts through activities. Mentors for the adults as well. Cub masters and den leaders, which are kind of what the leaders in the pack are called, that are adults, can be mentored by the advisors in the venturing crews. And they can kind of work together and talk about what's going on in the program. You also have families, in my experience, who you have some people that are Ventures, you have your Cub Scouts. It's kind of that family scouting atmosphere gets exploited and is so much fun. I have found that developmentally, knowing where they are and finding that sweet spot of how excited you are about things when talking or introducing a subject was something that 14, 15, 16-year-old Hannah was working on and had a conversation with at the time Cub Master, because sometimes they feel like you're being too childish when you're like really, really excited. So I like short story time, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Awesome. So I was working with about 6 months with a group of Weeblos, or a group of Wolf Scouts, so 7th graders. And for them, they have a really short attention span. So everything has to be, okay, guys, here we go. And really, really excited about everything. And we need a song and stop and do this. And then we're going to run across the room or the field in a safe manner, get our wiggles out, and then we're going to continue learning about the Scout Law. We're going to continue learning about tiger bites or weeblo bites, or whatever their belt loop that they're earning. And then I moved to a group of girls that were weeblo age. And at that age, they're cooler, and they don't want to be excited. Like that child excitement has kind of worn off for just a little bit of time.
Yeah, they're way too cool.
And I was there. I was that age one time. But it was something I had to learn of. You have to like slide in and be this like cool person with them in order for them to be interested in, oh, what does poison ivy look like? You can't just say, no, don't touch that. You have to give them the who, what, when, where, why, how, so that they can go home to their parents and then they can go, Mom, Dad, I learned about this and this is how it affects your skin and stuff like that. Like, don't touch it kind of thing. But that was a fun time that I like to share with people working with Cub Scouts. But that was a lot of fun. And so the next question I have for you was, when it came to your scouting adventures, one knows that there's things that we can do as venturers that Cubs can't. However, when planning your camp experience that you were talking about, how can venturers tailor the activities and projects to suit the interests and developmental needs of those Cub Scouts? Kind of like what I experienced, but how did you do that more proactively, I guess?
Yeah, I'd say something that really helped me is when I took on this role as like the youth program director. I had already been working with the Cubs for about, a year and a half, 2 years. So really just being super familiar with that Cub Scout program and its advancement made things a lot easier, because, like, I'll be honest, Boy Scouts of America knows what they're doing. Like the skills build off each other for each rank. So obviously like the skills the Tigers learn, it builds off the Lions learn, it builds off the Tigers, and it builds to the Wolves and the Bears, and then finally the Weeblo Scouts. And so the program is meant to work with the certain age groups you're given. And so by the time that like I've been working with them so long, like I'd figured out kind of their advancement, you know, I was a little embarrassed. I walked into our council scout shop and I said, I need a Weeblo's handbook. And the person working, they're like, why? You're like 19. And I'm like, no. No, you don't understand. I need this handbook. I need to know their advancement. I need to know what's going on. Because as soon as I was able to read through their advancement and figure out like what activities they do, I could kind of use those as like guiding posts for like, okay, if they can play game XYZ, they can play game ABC. Because if they're capable of this, they're capable of that. And so just kind of familiarizing yourself with kind of like the realm of Cub Scouts, you're more able to like understand kind of where the Weeblo Scouts are developmentally and what they're capable of. And they're capable of a lot.
I know. Sometimes we don't give them credit enough. The Guide to Safe Scouting is also a great place to go. There's the little charts that say you can play this, or you can do archery, but you can't do X, Y, and Z. That I find it helpful in my experience with that. And that sounds like a lot of fun. Did you see the new updates that Cub Scouting program has had? Aren't they awesome?
I am literally so excited. So, like, at first, I was like, quick story time. Last year was my council's first year of our kind of like Weeblo summer camp program. We did 1 week called Weeblo's Adventure Quest. And I also was the youth program director for that. So I worked very closely with some of the adults in our council, and we like built out this whole program. And then they're like, okay, guys, we actually changed the program. And then so at first I was like, oh no, I just built this. But then after like reading through the new changes, I'm like, wait, this is actually like 10 times cooler and gonna make my job 10 times easier, because the advancement just like, it like builds off of itself better. And I'm really excited to see what they do with it this summer.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear about it. You're going to have to call me and like update everything that you did and how you did it, because I'm so excited to hear about the adventures that you're able to have. The challenges, the successes, I love this so much. But I was looking through it, kind of listened to a few talks about the new program and how it builds, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. I wish I could go be a Cub Scout.
I know. I would love to take it back, be like a wolf, earn my bobcat, you know, feel like I'm the it girl because I just got my bear rank. But no, I'm too old.
Man, growing up is so sad sometimes. But we get to be adventurers, so that's the good news.
Hey, that's pretty cool in itself. I love it here.
Me too. And I guess to the next like interview question that we're going to talk about is, what role can ventures play in promoting that inclusivity and diversity within different Cub Scout groups?
Yeah, so this is like really fun for me. I take diversity and inclusion super seriously. I have a lot of my clubs here at college. I am public relations and DEI chair. Because it's something really close to home, as my father is from another country, hence the last name Fakhriravari. But this is like something really important to expose our scouts to at a young age as well, because everybody just loves to feel like they belong. That's such an important part of DEI, and making sure that these scouts feel loved and wanted. And so ways that we can do that as venturers, I'd say number one, lead by example. You know, we can demonstrate inclusivity and respect for each other and diversity through the world and in our actions, what we're saying, what we're doing, even when we're not wearing the uniform. Something my sorority jokes about, they're like, even when you're not physically wearing the letters, you're representing us. And I think the same goes for scouts. Even when you don't have your green uniform on, you're still a venturer, especially when you're in a position such as like, hey, council VOA president, people know who I am. And so just leading by example, it sets a positive tone, encourages them to do the same. We're the big kids in fancy uniforms. They don't see us on a daily basis. And so they look up to us. They're like, oh my gosh, they're so cool. So when they see us doing good things, they'll want to do good things too. Yeah. And then going along, I kind of have like this mental list going off of like lead by example, also celebrating diversity, encouraging them to celebrate their differences, no matter what kind of diversity it is, even if it's something as simple as hair color, skin tone, you know, cultural practices, celebrating it, learning about different traditions and cultures. I think it's really fun. My scout group and I, my venturing crew, we had kind of like a little cultural event where we each brought kind of like a food important to our own culture. And so hosting like little events like that, just simple ways to kind of like dip your toe into the water of diversity. It's just like, it's so cool to experience other cultures. And I personally love telling kids about my Persian heritage because, of course, I have my little camp name tag and it says Natalie Fakhriravari. And they're like, how do you say that? Because like they're young. They don't necessarily know how to pronounce foreign names. And so I tell them, and then I tell them the whole story. I'm like, yeah, my dad was born in Iran, and then he came to America and built a life, and now I'm here. And oh, they think it's so fascinating. And I tell them like certain words in Farsi, which is the language that my father grew up speaking. And so just saying something as simple as like, Noruz Mubarak, which means Happy New Year, it lights a spark in their eyes. Kids just think foreign cultures are the coolest thing ever. And so I love telling them about that. It's like my favorite thing. And then just kind of like the last thing is creating safe spaces for them. I mean, we already do this. We strive to make scouting a safe place, a place where you can fail, a place where you can be yourself. But just kind of ensuring that Cub Scout groups are safe and welcoming for all members, where individuals feel comfortable expressing themselves without fear of judgment or discrimination. I remember taking the little My Dot Scouting DEI training for summer camp, and it was so well done. My favorite line at the end, I'm going to butcher it a little because I don't remember it verbatim, but it said something along the lines of like, it's not enough to be invited to the party, but you need to feel like you belong. So like, kind of like you can be in the crowd, you can be in the group, but feeling like you belong in that group is something different. And that's something we can really foster against them. So I guess like in short, TLDR, it's easy to actively promote diversity and inclusion within Cub Scouts. Adventurers can contribute to this by creating a more welcoming and supportive environment where everybody feels welcome. And we can lead by example by doing that for our fellow scouts. I know that was a lot. I got a lot of thoughts in the noggin.
Love it. I love it. Taking notes here. I love how simple that was. And sometimes I've talked to fellow scouts and they're like, I don't want to work with Cub Scouts because it seems like a babysitting. I don't want to be babysitting. And the good news is, as venturers running program, they have adult leaders for that. Like they have their Akela. I don't know if it's called Akela anymore. That might be showing how long my age, but the kind of their friend, their adult, their adult human, their person that will go alongside of them when they're in Cub Scouts. They have den leaders, they have Cub masters. So it's definitely perfect. Say that again.
They have den chiefs as well, like Scouts BSA and Venturers and Sea Scouts who like just hang out and do the adventures with them and the adults. It's so cool.
It is very cool. And that den chief is actually what we're going to be talking about on the next episode. So like come back in 2 weeks and I'll have a den chief that we'll be talking to just about that experience. So I'm so excited for that. Kind of a sneak into the future here. But for now, can you discuss the importance of fostering a supportive environment where Cub Scouts feel encouraged to explore new challenges with these people that they're looking up to, these venturers, Sea Scouts, kind of thing?
Yeah, of course. I think it is absolutely so important that us as venturers and our Sea Scout friends as well, that we're just really conscious of our behavior in front of the Cubs. That we are just like aware of what we're saying, what we're doing. Cause like I said earlier, they look up to us. We're those cool kids cause we're older and we're wearing cool colors that they haven't seen often. This is just really important cause like a lot of my friends that I staff with, that I know, from council events, they joined a troop at first. Cause like some of them did Cub Scouts, some of them didn't, but they joined a troop. And they just realized that, Scouts BSA wasn't for them. And if it wasn't for the few venturers and Sea Scouts that they had met at like council events and at camps, they wouldn't have known about the program and they wouldn't have joined and they would have quit the BSA entirely. And so if we're just kind of like aware of our presence, even if we're not doing anything special, if we're just acting in a way that's welcoming and we're upholding these scouting values and we're those cool kids in the color green, it could really have a huge impact on them. Just kind of like that story from earlier where the girl's like, I want to be just like you. And I was like, whoa, I just got here.
That retention tool is crazy, that it can be used because they are different programs. And this is like the fallback all the time answer, but following that scout oath and scout law is so important, and they're so simple. We learn them. The Cub Scouts learn them. We learn it too, and we all say it together. And that's my favorite time, when there's Scouts, BSA Scouts, Order of the Arrow Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Venturers, Sea Scouts, all in the same room saying the same things, the ideals that we strive towards, that kind of guide us as our compass.
Oh, yeah.
And talking about that compass, like, what inspired you to introduce Cub Scouts to programs like Venturing and Sea Scouts during that specific event, that Weeblo's Extreme Camp? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, Weeblo's Coyote Trail Extreme. I know, it's a mouthful. We abbreviated it WCTX. I actually, oh my gosh, speaking of it, I just noticed on my reflection, WCTX, it's hanging off my uniform. But the main thing that there's like two things that inspired me to want to work with Cub Scouts, to want to show them all that this program has to offer. The first kind of reason that I mentioned earlier, I started my scouting journey staffing at a Cub camp. Shout out Beauvais Scout Ranch in San Luis Area Council. But that's kind of where I began as a venturer. You know, it wasn't just in a crew, it was at camp with Cubs. And a lot of my fondest memories are just from working with these kids down at the range, you know, teaching them archery with all of my friends on staff when we'd have our staff meetings with the camp director every night and we'd like go through our debriefs. Like, all of my memories that I'm most fond of have to do with Cubs and Cub camp. And it just kind of like puts into perspective, like, this is just such a special thing. Something about camp is just so special. And so, I don't know, I kind of like, even though I was a staffer, I'm like, I want to emulate this feeling for these kids, that camp is special. These are like some of the best memories you're going to have. And I hope someday you have these amazing memories at camp and then you grow up and you staff camp and make even more. So that was part of my reason for wanting to like really work with the Cubs. Another one, kind of like I mentioned earlier, my good friend Chris, who I mentioned, he told me, he was like, yeah, I joined a troop. It wasn't for me. And then I immediately joined Sea Scouts, and he's also a venturer now. Shout out venturing. But like, Cubs need to know there's more out there, because I love Scouts BSA. It's so much fun. I love teaching my little merit badges. My favorite one that I'm certified to teach is American Heritage, because it's like history major, the merit badge. But it's just not for every scout. It's such a different program from venturing, from Sea Scouts, even from Explorers. There's just so much the BSA has to offer, and I would hate for a Cub Scout to join Scouts BSA, think it's not for them, and then leave entirely, because I've gotten so much out of this program just being a venturer. And I mean, now I'm all Sea Scout. I've just, through my years, I've fallen in love with this program, and I just wanted to share my love for venturing kind of with the kids that kind of started my scouting career.
I love it. And Twinsies, a part of 2 programs. Shout out being chartered in multiple units. Yay!
Yeah, multiple units, multiple registration is my best friend. I had this phase where I was in 3 venturing crews, a Sea Scout ship, and I was ASM of a troop. So my scout book at the top of the page, it had like those 5 little bars. Ooh.
And merit badge counselor. You had the craziest scout book ever. And I was wondering, so I had my little experience in gaining enthusiasm and capturing the interests of Cub Scouts, and I had to learn the hard way. But what are your strategies, kind of in your experience from Cub Scouts, getting them excited for the programs and getting them kind of to pay attention, I guess, because they've been in school all day. We don't want it to feel like school. Scouting's a game with a purpose. What strategies have you found?
Yeah, so just say it as simple as it is, but make it fun. I am a firm believer that you should never talk at the Cub Scouts for more than a minute straight. It's such a different realm from Scouts, BSA, venturing, Sea Scouts. They just have a shorter attention span. They're more excited. They have more energy. So this shouldn't be a merit badge class. You shouldn't be sitting down, speaking. You're not a professor in college, and they're not here to take notes and get a merit badge. They're here to have fun. They're here to do their Cub Scout advancement. They're here to learn and make friends. And so make it fun. See, how can you push the limits while staying within, kind of like those boundaries of what's safe and like what's allowed for their age. I know for me at Weeble's Coyote Trail Extreme, I was like, okay, so the venturers, what's something we can do with these kids? Because obviously the Sea Scouts did canoeing with them. They had a lot of fun. For venturing, I'm like, what's like a high adventure activity that's safe for like 10-year-olds? And obviously we could have taken the easy route. We could have been like, we're going to tie knots. And knots are cool and all. Don't get me wrong. But when you're doing something called Coyote Trail Extreme, you're kind of hoping for the extreme aspect. So I'm like, what's something these kids don't do every day? And then I was like, catapults. And then, of course, we went through the conversation. I was like, please, can we launch fruit? And they're like, no, that is not safe. And I'm like, I get it. There are certain bounds. But it's all about understanding how can you kind of push the limits within the limits. What can you do that's fun and exciting and yet safe and offers that scouting experience that the kids are going to remember? So we ended up landing on catapults, and they launched just a bunch of random things they made out of like paper. And we did have some expired oranges that they let us use too. And they just shot them into an empty field. And those kids did not stop talking about it all day. So we could have sat down and done knots, but instead we launched things.
I love it. And it's totally worth the going and collecting the paper airplanes and the expired oranges to go put in the compost pile. Like 10 out of 10 would totally recommend. It sounds like. Awesome. I wish I would have heard that explanation like 6 years ago. So throw this episode back to the past me. This would have been so helpful. I'm sure, hopefully people are taking notes at home. But I know it's not all rainbows, butterflies, glitter, yay, funness all the time, because, there's always challenges and obstacles. And what are some challenges that people watching might experience, and how could they overcome them?
Yeah, so I think honestly the biggest challenge I faced, and I think a lot of people face, is just the age gap. Sometimes it's really hard for venturers or even Scouts, BSA, or Sea Scouts to interact with the Cub Scouts because we're so used to being around Scouts our own age. We're with our adult advisors, we're with that 14 to 20 range, and we kind of like block out the world around us. And so we're just not used to interacting with kids like that. And I know for me, like, I was the youngest sibling, and I was also the youngest cousin in my family. So I was always the little one. So as soon as I got to like 14, 15, there were no little ones that I was interacting with on to a child. Like, what do I say? What are they interested in? What if I say the wrong thing? And honestly, the main way to overcome it is just, they're people. Go up and talk to them. You'll get some like really fun answers or really weird ones. I have had some of the most engaging conversations with the Weeblos. They are at just such a fun age where they just share any and everything, and they are not afraid to share any and everything. Scouts have said some interesting things to me. I think one of my favorite ones is I was at the archery range. This kid runs up to me. He says, "Have you ever dissected a frog?" Books it, runs away, doesn't come back, doesn't even wait for my answer. It was, no, I haven't dissected a frog. But he asked.
Surprise! Wow. That's kind of a I don't know what to say moment. Yeah. And yeah, well, I guess that Scout had fun in biology class.
You did. But honestly, just talk to them. You'll either get a funny story out of it, or you'll have an engaging conversation. Get a little window into the life of a Weeble Scout, a Cub Scout, see what's going on in their world. It's also refreshing because I know my brain's like, test, exam, quizzes, homework, and then they're like, I saw a cool bird. And it's just like, I wish I saw that cool bird, man. That is so
Yes,
cool.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, you
Yes,
did see that
you
cool
did.
bird. It was
You
the
saw that.
coolest bird. And I love it. I love it. That's really cool. We were doing a service project one day, and somebody was like, "Oh, I see a rainbow." There was no rainbow, but it was an April Fool's prank. And that was just a funny experience that none of us got. He got me, he got the adult leaders. There was no rainbow. Man, it wasn't even raining, no clouds in the sky, but he made us all look up, and I'm sure he's talking about that even now.
Oh, yeah.
How do those interactions with Cub Scouts align with the overall goals and values of the venturing program, such as leadership development, community service, the ALFS model?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. In my experience, we lead the adventure and we let them follow by doing their best and having fun along the way. Kind of like that whole theme we've been going off, lead by example and then have fun. So if we're leading that adventure and they're just having fun, following along, doing their best, Cub Scout motto, it's a great time, and it can really foster that sense of community, that sense of belonging we talked about. And honestly, it also puts it forward leadership development, because those kids see you're the leader, you're doing these cool things, you're leading this adventure, and they say, I want to be that. Let me take these trainings. Let me go to NYLT. Let me do ILST. Let me do all these things when I'm old enough so I can be like that scout I saw at camp. And it's pretty simple. You just got to lead the adventure.
I love it. I love it. That's a great conclusion there. Is there anything else that you want to say before we put a bow on it? Tell everybody good night.
Oh my gosh, you put me on the spot. I don't know. Fine, I'll do something silly. Let me show everybody. I just took wood badge and I was a Bob White, and I think this is the funnest new addition to my uniform. I now have a full Bob White hanging off my uniform. Has nothing to do with the conversation. I figured people might have saw him just sitting there during the whole interview. He makes noise. Don't know if you can hear it.
I can hear it. Oh my goodness.
So that's my closing remark. I have a Bob White on my shoulder. That's it.
That's so very cool. I know we talked to someone that went through Wood Badge the other day, because Ventures can do Wood Badge. Great promo there. And thank you so much for coming. I've had a great time, great conversation. I hope we continue to talk about our venturing experiences.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
Me.
You're welcome. And I wanted to just take a really quick second to say thank you to our listeners for tuning in to this episode of the Venturing BSA podcast, Leading Our Adventures. Thank you so much again, Natalie, for your stories, how venturing plays a critical role in fostering mentorship, leadership, and a sense of community among our Cub Scout friends, which truly are part of our future. So in 15 years, we look back, maybe not that long, maybe just 10, and we see our Cub Scout friends who are now all grown up, maybe on this podcast.
Hey, and they're wearing
that would
green.
Be really cool.
They
are wearing green. That's so exciting. Through joint activities, celebrating diversity, and creating safe spaces, adventurers can positively impact lives of young scouts, help them explore new challenges with confidence. And your passion for introducing Cub Scouts to programs like Venturing and Sea Scouts is very commendable. Thank you for sharing your efforts in organizing events like this, like the Weeblos Coyote Extreme Experience. Did I get it?
Weeblos Coyote Trail Extreme. You were close. I'll commend you for that. You were close.
Okay. Well, next time I will do my best and I will get it right. You are making a significant difference, like everyone watching right now, in the lives of those young scouts. By leading the example and supporting one another, having fun along the way, we continue to make a positive impact. And in the next episode, like we teased earlier, we're going to talk to another guest about a way that they get involved in Cub Scouts, because there's so many opportunities. But for now, if you have any questions, talking to the viewers like you out there, if you would like to share your own venturing crew experiences, feel free to reach out to our Facebook or Instagram accounts. Remember to subscribe to Leading Our Adventure. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes. And until next time, happy venturing. Bye, guys.
Bye.